Why should I apologize for the monster I've become when it was the world that fed it? When it was them who dug the pit, tossed me in, then cried wolf the moment I clawed my way out with blood on my hands? You see, people love to point fingers at the aftermath. They love the headlines. They love labeling the product as broken, toxic, dangerous. But where were they during the making of the monster, huh? Where were the tears, the empathy, the questions? Nowhere. Because no one gives a damn about your story until it fits their narrative. And that's where it begins, right there. Not with the blood, not with the fire, but with the silence. The silence when you screamed. The silence when you shattered. That's where you start turning. That's when you start realizing the only one coming to save you is the beast you keep trying to lock away. You think I woke up one day and chose to be this? No. They pushed. They ignored. They used. They lied. They drained every ounce of purity left and then acted shocked when I stopped bleeding for them. And now they want me to feel bad for surviving? They want me to feel guilty for becoming immune to betrayal? Screw that. I'm not sorry. Not for the armor I wear. Not for the blade I swing. And not for the way I don't flinch anymore when someone leaves. I ain't the villain in their fairy tale. I'm the reality they created when they treated me like a side character in my own damn life. They made me watch them take, watch them smile while I broke. And now they flinch when I look back with a fire they can't put out. Good, they should, because this right here, this is what happens when a good soul gets buried under disrespect. And let me tell you something, they won't remember your kindness, not when it's convenient to forget. They won't remember the nights you showed up, the times you swallowed your own pain just to be there for them. Nah, they only remember the moment you said no, the moment you snapped, the moment the mask slipped and they saw the fire in your eyes. That's when they panic. That's when the word monster starts to roll off their tongues. But where were those words when you were just a broken man holding in screams behind a fake smile? Nowhere. Because they loved you weak. They loved you soft. They loved you tame. The moment you flipped the switch and stopped playing their little game, suddenly you're too much. Suddenly you're the danger. Suddenly you're the problem. But here's the thing. Monsters don't come out of nowhere. They're built, forged in betrayal, tempered in pain, sharpened by loss. And me? I just stopped pretending. I stopped trying to fit into a world that chews up the gentle and spits out the loyal. I stopped bleeding for people who wouldn't even offer a damn bandage. And I started remembering every name, every scar, every fake friend, every back turned. I didn't become this overnight. It was slow. It was cruel. It was deliberate. And now I'm deliberate too. So why should I apologize for learning the rules they forced me to play by? You know what's funny? They say, don't let the world harden you. But what they really mean is stay soft so we can keep using you. That's the real translation. That's the truth they won't say out loud. Because the moment you start building walls, the moment you stop being available to everyone's convenience, they panic. They call it coldness. They call it arrogance. But in reality, it's self-respect. It's the product of every time you were loyal and they treated it like a joke. Every time you said, I got you, and they said, I forgot you. Every time you bled and they brought knives to finish the job. That kind of pain, it changes something inside you. It rewires you. You stop seeking love from empty hands. You stop needing validation from people who only clap when you're weak. And you start listening to that voice in your head, the one that's been screaming for years, burn the bridge, walk alone, become everything they fear. They didn't want peace. They wanted control. You being soft made it easy for them to manipulate. You being silent made it easy for them to sleep. But when you woke up, when the fire inside you said, enough, that's when the fear started. That's when they branded you dangerous. Because you finally saw the game. You finally played by your own rules. And people hate that. They hate when the puppet cuts its own strings. They hate when the weak one turns ruthless. They hate when the quiet one remembers every damn detail and starts returning the energy. They hate when the victim becomes a weapon. And that's what I am now. A walking reminder of what happens when someone stops apologizing for surviving. Let me tell you something you already know, but the world won't admit. They'll never love you the way you deserve. Not when you're whole. They only love you when you're broken enough to need them. Quiet enough to obey. Soft enough to bend. But when you start healing, when you start roaring instead of whispering, suddenly you're a threat. Suddenly your strength is too much. That's the thing. They don't want you better. They want you dependent. They don't want your truth. They want your silence. And the moment you stop playing small for their comfort, they scatter like roaches under light. So why should I apologize? For what? For refusing to shrink? For refusing to bleed? For people who clapped when I fell? For refusing to stay the same man who kept waiting for respect that never came? Hell no. I owe no one an apology for rising. See? This monster they speak of? It isn't rage, it's clarity. It's the moment you realize that giving people chances was never kindness. It was weakness, because they knew they'd always get another one. And you know who gave them that power? You. Every time you forgave without change. Every time you gave access to people who only brought chaos. Every time you said, it's okay, even though it wasn't. And now, the moment you say, no more, suddenly you're the bad guy. Let them talk. Let them paint the villain story, because I'd rather be the monster that walks alone with dignity than the puppet they kept around for comfort. You know what kind of peace hits different? The one that comes after vengeance. Not vengeance that breaks laws, but the one that sets boundaries so sharp it slices through the soul. The vengeance of not answering the phone. The vengeance of success without them. The vengeance of proving every one of them wrong by being everything they swore you couldn't be. That's my favorite kind of revenge. The quiet, calculated kind. The one that makes them sit in the silence of your absence and choke on the memory of your loyalty. Because nothing stings more than realizing the person they took for granted was the only one who ever gave a damn. You know what they never talk about? The quiet deaths. Not the kind that stop your heart, but the kind that kill your spirit. The kind that happens slowly, when you keep showing up for people who never show up for you. When you keep pouring from a cup they keep breaking. When you keep choosing people who only pick you when they're lonely. That's where the monster starts growing. Not from rage, not from hate, but from emptiness, from silence, from being invisible to the ones you screamed your soul for. You think a monster's born from fire? No, it's born from disappointment, from swallowing pain for years until it turns into a second skin, until it becomes normal, until breaking feels like breathing. And when you finally snap, when you finally say, I've had enough, they look at you like you're the problem, but you're not. You're the product of every time they chose themselves while you were choosing them. They'll never own what they did. Never admit how they pushed you to the edge. Because accountability, that's not in their dictionary. It's easier to call you cold than to admit they drained the warmth out of you. It's easier to call you distant than to admit they pushed you away. It's easier to say you changed than to admit they never deserved the old you. So they'll play victim. They'll cry louder. They'll twist the story. But deep down, they know. Oh, they know exactly what they did. They just hope you stay quiet about it. They hope you carry the guilt while they carry the mask. But not anymore. This monster ain't hiding in the shadows anymore. This monster remembers. This monster learned. This monster stopped bleeding for people who never once held out a hand when he was drowning. You see, pain has a way of teaching you things books never could. Pain introduces you to reality, strips you from fantasy, shows you who's real and who's just using you to fill their voids. And when you finally learn, when you finally wake up, you stop chasing. You stop begging. You stop explaining yourself to people who never cared to understand you in the first place. You become colder, not out of hate, but out of wisdom. Because you realize the price of being too warm in a world that feeds off coldness. So why should I apologize for finally learning to protect my peace, for finally loving myself more than the people who only loved my benefits? Nah, that ain't weakness. That's evolution. That's what surviving looks like when you've been betrayed too many times to count. Let me break it to you like this. Everyone wants you broken. Not because they're evil, but because broken people are predictable. You're easy to control when you're scared. You're easy to manipulate when you're desperate. That's why they love trauma. It makes you obedient. But when you heal, when you sharpen your teeth and walk away with your chest high, now they're threatened. Now you're toxic, arrogant, too much. Because you don't bend anymore. Because your yes comes with standards now. Because you ain't the same little puppet they once guilt-tripped into submission. And that's the power of pain. It either destroys you or rebuilds you into something they can't touch. And me, I chose to rebuild. I chose the long road. I chose to get up when they left me for dead. And now I'm the one they whisper about, the one they fear, the one they regret letting go. But I ain't looking back for closure. I'm not hoping for apologies. I'm not chasing explanations, because I finally understood you don't owe me anything, and I don't owe you forgiveness. I owe myself revenge. And that revenge isn't about hurting them. It's about becoming so strong, so solid, so untouchable, that they feel your absence like a bullet in the soul. That's the vengeance I live for. That's the silence I speak now. Let me give you a truth most people aren't ready to hear. Being good will destroy you if you give it to the wrong people. Read that again. Being kind, being loyal, being soft, being understanding. They sound beautiful on paper, but in the wrong hands, they're weapons used against you. And that's what they did to me. Took my goodness and bled it dry. Took my loyalty and tied me to it like a leash. Took my silence and mistook it for weakness. And the moment I started fighting back, I became the villain in their fairy tale. But here's the plot twist they never expected. I'm not the villain, I'm the correction, the balancing force, the result of being crossed one too many times. Because if pain doesn't change you, it kills you. And I wasn't about to die with my hands out and my voice shaking. I stopped expecting apologies. Stopped waiting for them to see the damage they caused. Because people like that, they don't see the destruction they leave behind. They just move on and act like you're the one with issues. So, I did the one thing they never saw coming. I became untouchable. I built my walls with the very bricks they threw at me. I let the cold turn me into stone. And now I don't beg, I don't chase, I don't explain. Because I finally realized my worth wasn't up for debate. And anyone who makes you feel like you gotta shrink to be loved, leave them. Leave them bleeding in the silence they forced you to live in. Let them drown in the echo of the love they never appreciated. They say revenge is for the weak. Nah. Revenge is for the ones who were strong enough to survive the storm, but wise enough to never go back into it. My revenge ain't petty. It's not about screaming or fighting or proving points. It's about peace. Cold, sharp peace. The kind that comes when you no longer react. When your silence becomes the loudest answer. When your glow gets so blinding they need to wear regrets like sunglasses. That's the kind of revenge that lasts. The one that sits in their throat like unspoken guilt. The one that makes them wonder every single night what you could have become together if they hadn't messed it all up. And I promise you, they will wonder. Because no one forgets the person who gave them everything and then walked away without looking back. Don't let them fool you. Don't let them gaslight you into thinking your healing makes you bitter. They'll say you've changed, that you're colder, harsher, more distant, but they'll never admit why. They'll never own the 1,000 cuts they left while smiling in your face. They'll never acknowledge the betrayal they served you with a straight face. Instead, they'll paint you like you lost your way. But in reality, you found yourself. You stopped being the version of you that they could abuse. And for the first time in your life, you became free. It hurts, sure. Growth always does. But what hurts more is staying small to make them comfortable. What hurts more is staying silent in the face of disrespect. So when you finally break those chains, don't apologize for the noise it makes. Let it echo. Let it shake the walls. Let it be a warning. Let me tell you a little secret. You don't get peace by being soft with people who live off chaos. You get peace by becoming the kind of person they fear losing. Not because you beg, but because your absence is too heavy to ignore. And once you become that, once your silence becomes punishment, you'll understand why I don't apologize. You'll understand why I don't explain myself to people who never earned a front row seat in my life. They watched me burn and did nothing. Now they'll watch me rise and they'll do the same. Nothing. Just sit there and choke on the silence of the monster they created. You ever notice how people love to say you've changed when you stop letting them walk all over you? Like change is a crime. Like growth is betrayal. But let me explain something, and I want this to hit deep. You were never supposed to stay the same person after betrayal. Pain doesn't just change you, it rebuilds you. Break by break, lie by lie, scar by scar. And what comes out on the other side ain't soft. It ain't gentle. It's not built for comfort. It's built for survival. That's what they don't understand. I didn't change because I wanted to. I changed because I had to. Because being the old me would have meant dying quietly while pretending everything was okay. And I'm done dying in silence. They only loved the version of me that made their lives easier. The one who answered every call. The one who stayed up comforting them while breaking on the inside. The one who kept believing the same lies because he was too loyal to walk away. That version? He's dead. Gone. And I buried him with the weight of every "I'm sorry" that was never meant. Every "I promise" that turned into a joke. And now they want to mourn what they killed with their own hands? Nah. Let them grieve in the shadows. Let them miss the man they once had access to. Because the monster they see now, that's not me gone mad. That's me finally waking up. Let me hit you with something real. Forgiveness ain't weakness, but repeating the same mistake is. I ain't got time for circles, for empty apologies followed by the same betrayal. You do me wrong once, that's your lesson. You do me wrong twice, that's mine. And I've learned mine. I learned that love without respect is poison. That words without actions are just distractions. And that loyalty to the wrong people will leave you empty enough to turn into something unrecognizable. And here I am, not evil, just aware. Aware that people will take as long as you let them. Aware that some relationships only survive as long as you keep shrinking. Aware that sometimes the best revenge ain't revenge at all. It's distance, silence, disappearance. You ever go so quiet they wonder if you're alive? That's the type of power I carry now. Not the kind that screams. Not the kind that needs attention. The kind that leaves silently and takes the light with it. The kind that makes them realize, too late, that you were the only real one they had. Because people like us, we don't just leave, we endure. We endure beyond reason, beyond pain. We give people chances no one else would. We carry burdens no one sees. But once the cord snaps, once we decide we're done, that's it. No drama, no screaming, just gone. And that kind of exit, that haunts them. They won't say it out loud, but trust me, they feel it. Every morning they don't hear from you. Every laugh they can't share. Every moment they realize they burned the bridge, thinking they could rebuild it later. But you lit it from the other side, and you walked away. Not because you stopped caring, but because they never cared enough to keep you. That's the irony. They lose you thinking they'll find better. But what they find instead is regret. Cold, relentless, loud at night. Because no matter who they meet after you, it won't feel the same. Not because you were perfect, but because you were real. And that kind of real is once in a lifetime. You know what makes me laugh the most? It's not the betrayal. It's not even the lies. It's the shock in their eyes when you finally stop playing dumb. When you stop picking up their calls. When your tone changes. When the softness disappears from your eyes. That's when they start acting like you're the one who switched up. But let me be clear. I didn't switch up. I wised up. I stopped giving discounts to people who kept robbing me blind. I stopped setting myself on fire to keep people warm who wouldn't even light a match for me. You want to call that heartless? Fine. I'll wear it like armor, because I'd rather be heartless than hopeless. I'd rather be hated for walking away than destroyed for staying. Let's talk about guilt. Not mine. Theirs. The guilt they pretend doesn't exist. The guilt they silence by gossiping about you. The guilt they drown by playing victim in stories they wrote with their own cruelty. But here's the kicker. Guilt doesn't go away. It rots. It festers. And while they're out there pretending you were the problem, it's eating away at them. Every time they see someone like you, every time they hear your name, every time they realize that no one else tolerates what you did, that's when guilt slaps them. Quiet, private, vicious, and no amount of lying can stop it. That's why they hate your glow. That's why they hate your peace. Because they know they had you and they lost you, not because you changed, but because they never appreciated the version of you that would have burned the world just to keep them warm. You don't need to explain the monster you became. You need to understand it. You need to study it, accept it, respect it, because that monster is the result of you refusing to die silently. It's your protector now. It's the reason you don't cry over texts left unread. The reason you don't beg for loyalty anymore. That monster is you. After surviving every emotional war they declared without warning. It's the proof that your soul didn't break. It transformed. And that transformation, that's what scares people. That's why they try to shame it, because they know they can't manipulate it anymore. Because the version of you that once lived for their approval now lives for self-preservation. You see, the old you was too nice, too soft, too understanding, always explaining, always fixing, always compromising. But monsters don't compromise. Monsters don't beg. Monsters don't ask twice. And now that you become one, you finally see it. The truth they never wanted you to find out. That you were never the problem. You were just too good for the wrong people. And they couldn't handle that. So they broke it. They drained it. They left it. And when it rebuilt itself into something unrecognizable, they called it cold. But what else did they expect? You don't plant poison and harvest roses. You don't burn someone down and act surprised when they rise in flames. Let them think you're evil now. Let them think you're dangerous. Because the truth is, they created this version of you, and now they're terrified of what they made. And they should be. They should be scared of the silence. Scared of the new standards. Scared of the way you walk now, like you don't owe anybody anything. Because you don't. You don't owe them your time. You don't owe them your softness. And you damn sure don't owe them an apology. Not for becoming the monster. Not for choosing yourself. Not for surviving in a world that tried everything to break you. Let's talk about silence. Not the peaceful kind. The dangerous kind. The kind that comes after the storm. After you've said all there is to say. After your soul's been ripped wide open too many times. That silence, that's the sound of a monster learning to breathe. That's the part they never see coming. See, people expect rage. They expect you to scream, cry, fight back. Because as long as you're reacting, they still have power over you. But the moment you go silent, that's when everything shifts. That's when control slips through their fingers. That's when they realize they don't own a piece of you anymore. That's when they finally get it. The real monster isn't the one who yells. It's the one who doesn't need to. I used to speak. I used to explain, to justify, to overthink every word just to keep people from misunderstanding me. But then I realized something dark and liberating. They were never listening anyway. They were waiting to twist your words, waiting to turn your pain into ammunition, waiting to use your loyalty like a leash. And once I learned that, I went quiet, not out of weakness, but out of precision. Because when you stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, you start hearing yourself louder. You start focusing that energy inward. You start realizing that maybe, just maybe, you were never broken. You were just surrounded by people who kept pulling you apart. And that's what fuels the monster. Not hate, not rage, but awakening. It's when you finally see the manipulation for what it is. When you finally understand that the same people calling you too much were always giving you too little. That the ones who couldn't match your energy were always the loudest about your intensity. And when the switch flips, you don't go back. You can't go back. Because the version of you that tolerated that nonsense is dead and buried. And every time someone tries to resurrect him, they get met with fire. Cold, calculated fire. They say monsters are heartless. They're wrong. We've got hearts. Big ones. That's the problem. We just gave it to the wrong people for too long. We invested in ghosts. We tried to water the dead. We fed loyalty to snakes and called it love. So what happens when that kind of heart wakes up? It gets armor. It gets teeth. It gets smart. And suddenly the same people who once used your kindness like a doormat start calling it arrogance when you finally stand. They say you're full of yourself when you stop begging for crumbs. But let them talk. Let them choke on every lie they told about you. Because in the end, their words are just noise. Your growth, that's the proof. You want to hear something dark? Sometimes you gotta become what you feared to survive what they did. You gotta let go of the innocence, the patience, the softness. Because some environments ain't built for gentle hearts. They're built to crush, to conquer. And if you don't evolve, you go extinct. That's what this monster is. An evolution. Not the death of the soul, but its rebirth. Stronger, sharper, colder. And while they sit around trading gossip, you're out here building empires from the wreckage they left you in. You're out here crafting a future with the same hands they tried to break. That's the vengeance. That's the sweetest revenge. You didn't fall. You transformed. You didn't lose yourself. You found the version of you that doesn't flinch. Here's the thing they'll never understand. Monsters like me weren't born in darkness. We were dragged into it, dragged by betrayal, pulled by lies, shoved down by every person who smiled in our face while planting knives in our backs. And we stayed quiet for so long, didn't we? Sat in the mud, took the hits, swallowed the pain. We believed in people who never once proved themselves. We forgave what we should have walked away from. We clung to loyalty like a lifeline, thinking if we just held on a little longer, maybe they'd change. Maybe they'd see our worth. But they didn't. They saw our silence as permission, our kindness as weakness, and our love as something they could drain and toss away without a second thought. That's what they don't talk about. That's the real creation story behind every monster. They made us this way, then cried when we stopped bleeding for them. I stopped explaining my pain. I stopped telling people what they did. Why? Because it never mattered. You could hand them your heart, and they'd still ask why it wasn't beating the way they liked. They never cared about the truth. They cared about comfort. And your truth, your reality, that inconvenienced them. So they rewrote the script, painted themselves as heroes and you as unstable, you as cold, you as toxic. But they forgot something. They forgot that truth always echoes, even in silence. And the day they see you rise without them, that's the day their lies begin to suffocate them. That's the day they realize the version of you they discarded was the best thing they ever had. You want to know what real strength looks like? It's not in how loud you scream or how many people you confront. Real strength is walking away when your heart still cares, but your soul knows better. It's saying, I loved you, but I love me more now. It's knowing the battlefield is full of traps and still walking through it alone, armor on, jaw clenched, heart numb, but eyes open. I don't need closure. I don't need an apology. I don't need them to admit what they did. I need results. I need silence. I need peace. And if becoming a monster is what bought me that peace, then I'd do it all again. Every cold stare, every sharp word, every brick I laid to build this fortress around my soul, worth it. Every damn one. And let me tell you something brutal. No one's coming to save you. Not your friends, not your family, not some imaginary redemption arc. It's just you. You and the pain. You and the choices. You and the long, sleepless nights where your mind plays reruns of every betrayal. And in that loneliness, that's where the real you is born. Not the version you show the world, not the polite mask. I'm talking about the version that wakes up one day and says, no more. No more bleeding for people who wouldn't even spit on you if you were on fire. No more maybe next time. No more making excuses for people who wouldn't lose sleep if you vanish tomorrow. That's when you stop being the victim. That's when the monster finally opens its eyes and the world changes. So if they're scared of what you've become, let them be. Let them stare. Let them whisper. Let them call you heartless, savage, ruthless, because they'll never admit it. But deep down, they respect you more now. They respect the you that says no, the you that walks away, the you that doesn't flinch anymore. Because power, it doesn't beg, it doesn't explain, it just is. And that's what you've become. Not evil, not bitter, just aware. And in a world that feeds off fake love and forced smiles, awareness is the real monster. The kind that doesn't break anymore. The kind that doesn't need anyone. The kind that they never saw coming.